Alright, so I have a disassemble video for you guys today. I'm going to show you how to disassemble an Xbox Series S. This can be used if you have any power issues, anything like that, in order to replace the power supply, or if there's like memory problems or anything like that. I'll go over that, as well as like fan issues, overheating, anything of that sorts. If you want to take it into your own hands and try to replace the HDMI port, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how to do that too. Well, I have videos of how to replace the actual port itself, but I'm going to show you how to access the port in order to replace that there. So when you first get the Xbox Series S, there's going to be two little pieces of tape right here over the screws. You're just going to need to pop those off. Those are the warranty stickers, which I'll make a video about later on. There's no such thing as warranty when it comes to consumer electronics through the actual companies themselves. It's just a way that they try to cover for themselves. Anyways, let's go ahead and disassemble this. Alright, so first things first is we need to take these two back screws out. For that, we're going to be using a T9 bit, which is like a little star-shaped bit there. Mine is kind of messed up, but that's all right. It'll still work for now. You're gonna need a T9 and a T10. All right, so first thing we want to do is obviously those pieces of tape will be right here. You're just gonna pull those off, and then we're gonna have to take these two screws out. These ones are the T9 bits, and set those aside. And now that we have that off, this actually just slides back, and then from there you can just lift up and take it right off. Alright, so now this is the actual console itself. There's another plastic piece, which is the top, that we have to separate from the console itself. So what we're going to have to do is we have to take out the dark green screws, because the dark green screws are the ones that are long, and they hold it to the top shell here. Sometimes they change the colors on these. They'll be like silver or black or something like that. So another way to tell is the long screws are flat on top and the shorter screws are rounded on top. So what we're going to be using for this one is the T10. So all of these ones here will be T10. These ones are T9, but all of the other ones are T10. So now we're just going to take out those long screws. Alright, and now that we have those screws out, what we can go ahead and do is separate the console from this top shelf here, or the top shell. So what we're going to do is basically pull apart on the edges right here. Not too hard, you don't want to break it, but just pull apart and just kind of push down. And when you're taking this apart, you got to make sure that you're still pushing out on those sides. I'll show you here in a minute. It just lifts out like so. You want to make sure that you're pulling out on the sides, because these little, where the screws in the back that we just took out, where those connect to, if it brushes against here, there's like a little component right here that can actually get knocked off. So you just want to make sure you're pulling out on that good enough. But here's the console, so we can go ahead and set the shells to the side there. Now that we have the console here, so there's a couple different ways you can take it apart. I'll just show you the way that I take it apart. So first of all, I leave this cover on, this aluminum cover here, because if you take that off before you decide to take the screws out, all of the stuff inside can fall out. So what I like to do is I like to take out the rest of the T10, the short screws here. Oh, it looks like there's a silver one right here, actually. And that's not a bad sound, I promise. It's just the, so I set my screwdriver here to 4. All of them have like different tensions that they use, so you want to use something that's not too tight. You also want to use something that's not too loose, or else you won't be able to take out the screws. It doesn't really matter when it comes to taking them out. You can put on drill if you wanted to when it comes to taking them out. But when it comes to putting them back in, you always want to make sure that you have it set for a limit so you don't over torque, because most of these are connected into plastic pieces and you don't want to break those plastic pieces right there, or else the screw will just be free floating inside of there and won't do its job. Alright, so now that we have all those T10 screws out, we're going to have to use our T9 bit, and we're going to have to take each one of these off here, and I'll show you how to do that right now. We're going to go ahead and change out our T10 for our T9 bit, and then we're just going to take these screws out here. So there's 1, 2, 3. All right, and now these are connected to the motherboard on the inside, so we're just going to need to lift that out. You can kind of shake it back and forth. You don't want to force anything because you don't want to break anything, but this little connector here connects inside there to the motherboard. So now that we have that one out, we can go ahead and take this one out. This one is the one where the power button is located. So we can go ahead and take that out. And again, we're using the T9 bit for these ones, because these screws are smaller. There's 1, 2, 3. All right, and same with this one. We can just kind of go ahead and pop that out there. Same kind of insert as the other ones. And then we're going to... You always want to stay organized with your screws. Keep them all together. You don't want to put screws in the wrong spot. Now that we have everything out, we can go ahead and take this top cover off here, and it just pulls up. Usually it's not that easy to get off the first time. This one I've already opened up before. So we're going to go ahead and pull up on that and release it. And now we have access to the power supply. So if your console is just dead, most of the time it's because of the power supply. You need a new power supply in it. A couple of times there's things that are wrong with the motherboard, but I'm just showing you if you wanted to replace your power supply, how you do it. So now that we have access inside of the console, the power supply, we took all the screws out of the bottom there. This power supply is probably one of the easiest ones I've ever worked with, because you literally just pull up. So there's the connectors right there that connect and give the board power. There's the plug-in where you plug it into the wall, which sits right in here. So if you need to change out your power supply, it's right there. And if you need to look at the model number, it'll be right here on the sticker right there. Alright, now let's say your fan's busted, or you think the fan is busted or anything like that. You can go ahead and take out the fan. It's super easy too. You just lift up, and you don't want to yank. Never yank on anything when you're disassembling. But now we're going to go ahead and take this little connector piece out here, and you're just going to grab it really tight and then kind of just wiggle it back and forth, not too hard, while pulling up. And you just want to make sure you try to take it out as straight as possible, because these ones have an issue with having a hard time coming out. But there you are, the fan is out. So if you need to replace a fan, that's how you do it. Alright, so now when it comes to taking the actual board out itself, what we need to do is flip it back over and go back to our T9 bit and take out these last 4 screws here. Alright, so now that we have those out, the motherboard actually fell out. It's not going to do that for you because there is a little ring that goes right here. Not a ring, more of like a clip, but it just slides in here. I'm going to go ahead and slide it back on to show you how to take it off. So with these, they're not necessary. You don't really need them unless if you're not very careful with your console and you're just absolutely brutal to this USB port here and you just want to jam the cord in there. But basically you just grab, you know, the outside of it and just push up, and it loosens it up enough for you to slide it out. So now that we have that out, what I like to do is just push up a little bit on that USB port, not crazy. If it's like stuck down, what you're going to want to do is grab the heatsink in the best way possible on these sides, because if you grab it this way, you can actually crush the heatsink, and you don't want to do that. So you want to grab it on the sides here and just kind of lift up on the back of it, and then just slide it straight out. I'm going to show you that from another angle here. Alright, let's get it back in there. Okay, so you're just going to grab the sides and just lift up and pull straight out. And the reason you do that is these ports stick into the slots right here, and you don't want to break any of those ports when you take it apart. So now we have everything completely disassembled down to the motherboard and the heatsink itself. So when it comes to the heatsink, if you're having overheating problems or anything like that, you can remove the heatsink on here. Basically, you're just gonna have to snap off all of these right here. I'm not gonna do it for this one. Oh, it looks like I got some of the, it's like a little thermal pad, got some of that on my thumb, but that's alright. So as you can see here, there's a little bit of darkness right here, and that's because I've already replaced this port before. So you just snap these little connectors off here. You want to be very careful when you do that, because you can scratch the motherboard, and if you scratch the motherboard right here, it's going to damage your system. The easiest way that I have seen to take these out, or not seen but have done, is to take a really thin flathead and just kind of slide its way in there and just kind of pry up on either side until it loosens up the corner right there. Let's see if we can get you a closer look. So there's like these little like wraparound corners right here, and you just want to loosen those up by going in here and prying up on either side, and then it'll loosen that up there. And you just do that to each one of these sides. Try not to bend this as much as possible. It needs to stay its same shape. If these bend outwards too much, then what you'll have to do is you'll have to bend them back in order to snap it back on and have it sitting there properly. So once you do that, the APU will be under here, and you can just replace the thermal paste there. For replacing thermal paste, you just need to take it off with like a Q-tip and some alcohol and just rub it until it's completely clean. Make sure none of it gets on the motherboard. You just want it to all, get taken out, and then you can put your own new thermal paste on there. So now that we have it completely disassembled, if you needed to replace the HDMI port, it's right here. If you need to replace anything else, such as USBs, they're right here. There's also that USB on the front there. And then there's like this memory card right here, which I'll have to make a video about some other time, but this tends to fail a lot, and the replacement for that is almost impossible to find. So, but I'll make another video about that. And that is how you disassemble it. So we're going to go ahead and put it back together. Putting it back together is the same as disassembling it, just the opposite. So we just want to slide those ports in first. And then once we have those ports in, you kind of just want to make sure the board is sitting right. And there's these little feet right here, and you just want to make sure that that gets pushed in there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it here on the edge. Let's see if you can see that. Make sure. Okay. So I'm going to set it here on the edge to put those T9 screws back in there. And the reason for that is setting it on the edge like this, the motherboard will be sitting in a better spot versus just setting it on a flat table. So we're just going to go ahead and screw these back in. I promise you I'm not stripping the screws, that's my actual bit skipping. I need to get a new one. Alright, so now that we have all those screws in there, the motherboard is secured inside of there. And once again, when it comes to replacing the fan, you would just put the fan back on here and plug that little connector back in and put the cords underneath this little hook here, and then you just want to line that up with the slots in the motherboard there to make sure that it's sitting right, make sure the fan spins freely. And then for the power supply itself, we're just going to make sure that we put that little connector piece right back on here, and so you're just going to slide it in nice and easy. and it fits perfect. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and secure those. We're going to take our T9 bit and our smaller T9 screws and secure it in all of those slots there. Alright, now that we have all of those back in, what we can do next is put the little cards back on here. So the one with the little slot in the edge there is going to go on the front, as well as the power button. And we're just going to slide those back in nice and carefully. Once we have those in, we're going to use our T9 bit again to screw in the T9 screws. And for these ones, I want to make sure that I don't over tighten them, because if they start free spinning inside of the aluminum here, they're really hard to get out. I've done it in the past. Not that I've over screwed them in the past, but I have tried to take them out before that somebody worked on, and they over screwed them, and took me longer than it should have in order to get those out. Then we're going to put this last one back in here. We're going to go ahead and screw those in too. Alright, now that we have all those screwed back in, we can go ahead and put this top cover back on here, and it just slides back on. Pops nice in there, and this little, there's a little guide there in order to put that on properly. Now we're going to need to put it back in the top cover. So what we're going to do is we're going to want to align the USB here with the little USB slot right there. Once you have that aligned, you're going to keep pressure on the outside here of the top cover to make sure that it doesn't hit that component in there, and then just pull out on the other side. Once you have that, the console should slide in perfectly. You're going to make sure that the top here is nice and secured, and it should just slide right into place. Alright, now we're going to take our long screws and throw them all back in, and these are going to be the T10 again. Now that we have all those in, we can go ahead and secure those, which will hold the top cover down. Alright, so my video died, but that's alright. We were almost done anyways. So we just put in all those T10 screws. Now all we have to do after screwing those in is put the bottom cover back on. And for this, what we want to do is just put it on until it lies flush. It's about, I would say, 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch that it allows for you to lay it flat. And so from there we just slide it forward until it sits perfectly into place. And then we're just going to need to put the screws back in here, and those will be the T9 screws. You don't want to over torque those and break the plastic, so we're just going to screw them in until it looks secure. Alright, and that is how you disassemble and assemble a Xbox Series S, as well as what you need to do if you need to replace a power supply or the fan, or the HDMI port itself. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, and thanks for watching.